I knew that when I moved to New York City, I was one day going to be successful. I thought it was going to be on Broadway or movies. Turns out it was as a real estate broker and now as the CEO of a real estate firm. The path is different, but that's okay. As long as you realize that bumps along the way are just speed bumps and not brick walls, you stay the path, learn from it, keep driving, and stay hungry.
Dave Bolger here, and welcome to Had I Known, conversations with interesting members of the Hamilton College community. This week's guest is Ryan Serhant, class of 2006. All right, be honest. You didn't think I'd do one this week, did you? You thought, just like last time, I would do one, and then I would take another break, even though I said I'd be back. Well, you were wrong. I'm here and I'm back and we're going to keep this thing going. Good to talk to you again. Turns out there are a lot of interesting people who went to Hamilton College. Simple as that. So there's a lot of people to talk to. And this week's guest is no different. But before we get into this week's guest, I want to take a moment to congratulate a former guest, Wally Bresler, on the release of his new book, Tragic Hero, Picking Up the Pieces. Now, if you haven't heard that conversation, I can't recommend it enough. Go back and check it out. And if you have heard that conversation, then you know how raw and vulnerable Wally was. Well, this book is beyond an extension of that conversation. In it, he tells the tale of surviving sexual, physical, and emotional abuse, his struggles with addiction, being incarcerated, and ultimately his realization that he needed to take control of his future, that has put him on a path to being as successful as he is today. It's an incredible story. You should listen to part of it come through in the conversation that Wally and I had for this podcast. And then I, again, highly recommend that you dig into that story more in his new book, Tragic Hero, Picking Up the Pieces, which is available on Amazon. And there's a link in the show notes in this episode for you to go check that out. So we pivot from one individual who has found success in real estate, to another individual, this week's guest, Ryan Serhant, who has built up a tremendous amount of success and built an incredible career in real estate. Ryan is the founder and CEO of his own real estate firm, Serhant. Ryan tells the story of building that company and launching it in the throes of COVID, but he also gets into his time before real estate. You may have seen him in his 19-episode run on As the World Turns, or you're more likely to know him from his run on the hit Bravo reality show $1 Million Listing, which we certainly talk about. Ryan is an interesting guy. He epitomizes the word hustle, clearly. In addition to his turns on television, he has written books, developed a series of classes to help others sell it like Serhant, and generally just seems determined to take over the world and be the number one real estate agent, number one real estate company in the world. And he shares a lot of good stories in this one. So have a listen. Here is Ryan Serhant, class of 2006.
Hold on one second. The air conditioning exploded on the roof of our building, and it is like death here.
Oh, good. I like to treat this like an interrogation anyway, so I'm good. We'll turn up the heat. That'd be good.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be okay. Well, I mean, it might not, but as long as you can hear me, it's okay. We just like a bunch of fans running all over the place. Hopefully that doesn't bother you.
I don't hear it, so that's pretty good mic you got there. Mm-hmm. How is Brooklyn?
Brooklyn is okay, man.
I did about 10 years in Brooklyn. I miss it.
Whereabouts?
Park Slope.
Okay. Nice.
Both my parents are from Brooklyn, and my mom used to give me shit because she said that, we busted our ass to get out of Brooklyn, and the first chance you get, you move back. I said, well, had you grabbed a couple of those brownstones, I'd be doing pretty well for myself right now.
Dude, you're telling me those brownstones are incredibly expensive now. But now Brooklyn's very popular. People come to me and they want to be in Brooklyn first. I'm negotiating a deal literally right now for, $8 million for a condo
I
in
believe
Brooklyn.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we moved to Boston.
Yeah, there you go.
Not that it's much.
That Boston.
I saw that.
Yeah.
And how'd you end up at Hamilton?
My older brother went to Hamilton.
Okay.
And so he had a good education there. It was a good spot. It was pretty similar to, I went to Pingree and North Hamilton, Massachusetts, so a small private school. And yeah, like a lot of kids from there would go to like those types of schools, like the liberal arts, the Hamiltons, the Bowdens, the Colbys, it's like if you didn't want to go off to a huge university, we've got thousands and thousands of kids, you still have that like small kind of college atmosphere. That's exactly what Hamilton was. Hamilton was, basically my high school, just a little bit bigger.
Yeah. And I know you were into the theater a little bit when you were at school. What else kept you busy when you're on campus?
While I was in Hamilton?
Yeah.
You know what, man? I was relatively pretty boring. I was part of a fraternity, so I was part of Deke.
Yeah.
So I do the Deke stuff, but I wasn't like the most active member. I mean, my days were literally like wake up, go to all my classes, make sure work was done, do theater at night, and then go to the gym. And I was always the one that like shut the gym down at night. I'd work out in the varsity weight room, even though I didn't play sports. And I'd go to bed, wake up, and like do it all over again. I always had a girlfriend, but I was very focused. Like I didn't go to a whole lot of parties. Like I was not the most social on campus. I was just very, very focused on kind of what I was there to do and, get it done, graduate it, and get out into life.
And what was the plan for once you got out into life?
For me, the plan was always to come to New York City and do theater, right? Be an actor. That's what I always wanted to do. I went to Hamilton because my parents wouldn't let me go to a theater school. But Hamilton had a good kind of creative theater program run by the late Carol Bellini Sharp. And Craig Luttrell was great as well. And I did a lot of work with him and Mark Cryer. But, that was my goal. Come to New York City, do theater. But, my parents were paying for college. So I was an English major, right? So that I wasn't just a theater major. But I took the LSATs. I did the LSAT prep. I did all that stuff, took the LSATs, totally bombed them. And that was it. So I guess I'm not going to law school. So I guess, that's the world's way of showing me that I need to go to New York City and try to be an actor, which was way harder than anyone, could anticipate. But it got me to New York. I don't know if I would have come here otherwise.
Why do you say it was harder than anyone anticipated or that you anticipated?
I guess, I don't know. People ask me now, like today, what my superpower is or my secret sauce. And I oftentimes I'll answer and say my stubbornness. If you are stubborn in your ways, you oftentimes won't see the difficulty around you. And somehow that has helped me a lot, because if I knew how hard it was to live in New York City without a job, like if I really knew it, without just saying like, I'll figure it out. I don't know if I would have gone. Like if I knew how hard it was to be rejected to your face 10 times a day because of your face, like, is that something I really would want to put myself through? So like everyone knows it's hard, but you don't actually look into the details. Like the idea is hard. The execution is even harder. Like, and so same thing with real estate. Like if I knew how hard being an independent contractor, selling other people's stuff is, where you have no agreements, there's nothing to do with you. You're just meeting strangers and trying to convince them to do it with you and not the internet. Like if I had any idea how hard that job was, would I really do it?
Yeah.
I don't know. And so,
and as a young person making no money, it's not the easiest city to afford.
Yeah, but you also have to, one of my favorite quotes and something my sister said to me when I first moved to New York, said to me when I got into the real estate business, said to me when I was auditioning for $1 Million Listing in New York, said to me when I started my own company over and over was, you'd rather regret the things you did than the things you never tried.
Sure.
Right. And I knew so many people that didn't come to New York because it was too scary and was too expensive and they would never make it work. And they're just going to go home and save money. And they're still there. They're still at home.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or they're still in some town close to where they are because it's incredibly comfortable. And so we choose comfort over success all the time. But we'll convince ourselves that it's not success we're choosing it over. We'll say we're choosing comfort over risk, right? Comfort over danger, comfort over money. But it's not, right? At the end of the day, all of those things combined add up to the potential for success. And so I just chose to not be comfortable. Like, again, I lived in a dorm for 4 years. I never really lived by myself completely. So what? I get to go to New York City and live in a 10-foot by 10-foot box. It's not a whole lot different from living in a dorm. I shared a bathroom with a lot of people, a lot of strangers. They just didn't look like me this time, and didn't speak English, most of them. And so, okay.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. It was just like, I got to figure it out. I got to go there and I just got to figure it out. What is the worst that can happen? You're going to die? Well, maybe. But as long as you don't take the subway at 3 a.m. and you don't cross the street while looking at your phone like an idiot, like, chances are pretty good that you're not going to die.
Right.
So you come here and just work your ass off.
Right. Make it work.
Yeah.
What was the jump to real estate like? Was it a conscious decision of I gotta go start making some money? And if so, why real estate?
Yeah, I ran out of money. I just ran out of money. I worked construction in the summers while I was in Hamilton. And so I saved up a little money from that. But that was also my school year money. So it's not like I had like saved all this money. It was, hey, work summer so I can have money to go into town and get pizza and like live my life.
Sure.
The big thing to do when you're in Hamilton is like go to Syracuse.
You want to see a good movie? Yeah, you go to
you go to the Carousel Mall. Now that's different, right? No one goes to theaters anymore. Just a different world. It's so weird.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine being in college today with social media and all that stuff. Like, Facebook had just come out. When we were at Hamilton, it was like this thing that we were sort of figuring out at the time.
Right.
But my grandfather had died. And so I had like, in total, between construction saves and my grandfather, had like $20,000 saved in change. It was like 22 or 23,000. And I saved that. And that was like the most money I'd ever had in my entire life. It's like that. All right. So my rent is going to be like $1,100 a month. I'm going to have to figure out a way to like spend on other things and make some other money on the side. But that at least gets me into New York City and I can figure it out. And I got onto a soap opera pretty quickly. I did As the World Turns. So that paid me $844 an episode. But that was my like rude awakening with taxes. It's like, I don't even make any money. What's all this? What do I have to give? What is FICA? Like, what do I have to give other people my money? I didn't even make any money yet. Like, how come they just can't start taking it after a certain point? Like, this is ridiculous. And so that, all of a sudden, all my liberal arts school teachings went out the window. And I was like, well, this is just bullshit. You work your ass off for a paycheck and then they take half of it from you. I don't understand. And then did some odds and ends job.
And you're on TV. This is it. You're supposed to be rich now. I'm on TV, right?
It didn't work. Yeah, it didn't work that way. And then the summer of 2008 was really like down at the wire there. It was like, I either go back to school and I don't know what I would do. I become a bartender, part-time, like most people do, wait tables like most people do, temp job, receptionist work like most people do. Or a friend of mine who also went to Hamilton, Jason Paulino, who was my year when he graduated, was a theater major as well. And he had come to New York and he didn't have the opportunity like I did to just not have a job for 2 years. And he had been doing, real estate as a broker, as a real estate agent, doing rentals in like the financial district. And he had a cool apartment and he had nice suits. And his life looked good. And he kept telling me all the time, he's like, dude, it's the same thing. You memorize information about buildings, you meet people on the street, and it's all improv. It's yes and over and over and over. You could do this and you could actually make money and stay in New York City. So I finally was just like, okay, fine. I'll get my real estate license, I guess. Oh God, it's like the worst thing ever. I can't believe I'm going to be a realtor. I moved here to be Brad Pitt, not be like your local licensed associate salesperson. I just like imagine all the business cards. Like, oh God, it was just like the worst thing in the world. But if I could make my own hours, and if I could do, because he said, listen, you can meet somebody who wants to rent an apartment for $5,000. Okay. And at the time, that was very expensive. Today, not so much. $5,000 in New York City in 2008, you're renting a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. Your commission's $5,000. You're splitting it with the house 50-50, give or take. And so you're in one day, I can make $2,500. It's like, holy moly, really? That's my rent plus all my food. All I needed to make to stay in New York City at that time was $2,000 a month. Not considering taxes, but $2,000 a month was like rent plus food and utilities, so I could have electricity and internet and stuff.
Right.
And I didn't want to have to be called upon to always go to a bar, or always go to a restaurant, or always have to like, oh, I got to make rent this week, and so I got to temp all next week, and then you miss opportunities for plays, for short films, for movies. Like that's what I still really wanted to do. Oh, and I was also making money from hand modeling. That actually paid me the most, right? That was like $150 an hour, and they pay you in cash. And you just have to pay tax on it at the end of the year, which I didn't pay attention to whatsoever. And so I'd work like, a 10-hour day and be like, boom, there you go. There's rent.
How does one even get into hand modeling?
Well, Dave, when I was on the soap, I got headshots made, right? So I had headshots made. And one of the headshots, and because I was on the soap, I was like, oh, now I'm going to make it, right? I'm playing Dr. Edmund Walsh IV. This is it. This is amazing. And so I had these headshots made, and I had an agent who would send me out for like print auditions for modeling. And I was the worst model ever. I would get none of them. I would book 0 of them. I was just terrible. I was just the most awkward, uncomfortably lanky, gray-haired, super pale model you've ever seen. Just was not booked. But I had one photo that I had taken where my hands were like holding my face, like a classic, almost like a beauty pageant girl, And he was like, I remember my agent at the time, it's like 2007, Rick Miller. He called me, and I also had another agent named Danny. And, but he called me and said, listen, I sent that photo in of you with your hands to a casting for AT&T. They're casting for hand models to hold phones. And I was like, you did what? You did what? I was like, I don't want to do that. And he's like, it pays $1,500 a day. And I was like, where and when and how? Where do I go for that right now?
I have 2 hands. I'll do twice.
Yeah. I was like, what do I have to do? And he's like, if they like your hands, you just have to pay. You just have to sit there and hold phones on camera. I was like, shut up. That's a job. I didn't even think I don't even know what I thought about that job. But anyway, I was like late to go to it the next day, and he calls me. He's like, just remember, you got to wear a sleeveless shirt. They need to see your whole arm. I was like, oh shoot. Right. So I ran down there. And I lived in Koreatown, which I did on purpose because it was on top of every single train, Macy's, like everything. I'd have food, I'd have clothes, and then every audition typically was in like the 20s and 30s in the center of the city, like tons of studios and casting rooms and all that stuff. So I could walk anywhere. So thankfully I lived in a place where I could easily run. And so I made it to the audition in time. I run in there. All these models are professional hands and feet and parts models. And they're all sitting there with their hands up like this as they're draining the blood out of their hands. So when they go to take the photos, I don't have veins in my hands when I go like this, right?
Yeah.
And I played piano a lot when I was a little kid, and my dad's long, so I have these like really long, lanky fingers and these big hands. And so I remember them asking me for my modeling book. Like when you go on a modeling audition, you bring a book of all the times you've ever taken photos, so they could see what you look like in makeup and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But this was show us all the photos of your hands. I was like, I don't have one of those. I'm sorry. This is the weirdest thing I've ever been involved in my life. This is exactly what my parents paid for me to go to Hamilton College to do, is to come here and have weird dudes take photos of my fingers. Like, I'm not telling my parents that. So I go in, and there's like all these Italian people, and it's like this whole big to do. And it's like, what in the world? Apparently it's this massive ad campaign that BBDO, this big ad agency, was running on behalf of AT&T Wireless back before the iPhone, really, and all that. And the whole campaign was, AT&T now in over 500 countries or something like that. It was something crazy. It was like China. And so they were painting hands in real life, like watercolor, to look like the Great Wall of China, and then it would hold a phone. And so they hung me upside down and like had my hands go in, and they were like talking about my hands and my knuckles and my metacarpal, and it's so weird. And I left, didn't even think anything of it. It's like, all right, great. My agent calls me the next day, and he's like, I don't know what you did. They've never seen more beautiful hands. I was like, are you kidding me? Is this real? This is like an episode of Seinfeld. Like, this is
exactly. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're like, no, they want you starting on Monday. You booked 5 full days. Can you budget that time? I was like, I don't have a job. Sure. I didn't have anything. I had some stuff at night, like some, acting classes and monologue prep and all the stuff that you do when you're an actor. But other than that, I would just be missing some random auditions and things. But I did that $1,500 a day for 5 days. It's the most money I'd ever made on my own ever. And that really helped me survive. And then from there, once those ads started coming out, they were on buses, taxi cabs, sides of buildings. I was hand famous. And then I started getting booked. People were calling. They're like, they want the AT&T guy's hands. So I was holding Nespresso capsules for like the winter catalog. Michael Phelps just won all the gold medals. I was Michael Phelps's hand double for advertisements and stuff. So that really helped me. So anyway.
Did you find yourself standing on the street corner trying to show off? Like, those are my hands. They're trying to get credit for it?
No, but I would take a few selfies back before the selfie. And so that's what I did. So then I got into real estate because I was going to run out of money and I couldn't just do hand modeling all the time. But I made more money from hand modeling my first year in real estate than I did from actual real estate. Like I made $9,000 from renting real estate my first 12 months because I also wasn't like, I didn't get into it because I wanted to become a realtor. I wasn't thinking I was going to build a real estate career and take over the world. Like my goal was to stay in New York City, pay rent, stay in New York. If this is the way to do it, where I can use my current theater skill set, which is all I really have, where I don't have to be in a certain place at a certain time, anytime. And it's really up to me. Like you can rent as many apartments as you want a month. You can rent 0 if you want to. It's totally up to you. No one cares. You're not paid. There's no salaries, right? You get your license, you hang it at a brokerage. Yeah. You eat what you kill every day. And so that's what I did. And so I started at a small little firm above a burger restaurant across from Saks Fifth Avenue. And I would put on my khaki pants and collared shirt, I didn't have a suit. And I'd go up there every single day and, still living on my hand modeling money. And I would try to meet clients for rentals. And I did, my first little rental deal and made like $500. It's like, that wasn't that bad. Like all I did was talk to a person, kind of make them a friend, walk them through the process. And they paid me $500 for renting a $1,000 a month studio, like in Koreatown. Like, what if I rented a $2,000 a month apartment? What if I rented a $3,000 a month apartment? And I could see why there was a need for real estate agents because the process is so convoluted. There are no law. Like it is the wild, wild west. You need somebody to really walk you through. Like you can self-diagnose yourself, but you should probably go to the doctor. Right. Same thing with real estate. Like, yes, you can do it on your own, but you're probably going to get taken advantage of and you're going to pay more than you need to.
That's so much of it, right? It's just understanding the process, regardless of how big the property is, I imagine.
Listen, as fast forward to today, literally this moment right now, like I just told you at the beginning of this conversation, right? I'm negotiating a deal in Brooklyn for a condo for $8 million right now, right? The buyer is a private equity guy who doesn't need me, doesn't need a broker. Everything's on the internet. Why me? Why me? Why me? Why me? He's like, I'm going to go in there. It's like, okay, what's the asking price? It's $9 million. Okay, well, what would you offer? It's like, well, I've looked at all the comps. I know everything. I'm a genius. I'm going to offer 8.2 and I'm going to hold firm. It's like, okay, I know who the developer is. I know who the construction lender is. I know all the comps that you don't know. They're not public. And if I'm you, and I'm not, you do what you want to do, I'd offer 7.5. I think I can get this deal done for under 8. He said, no way. Like, let me see if I can get it for you. If I can't get it done for under 8, go buy it on your own. I'll waive commission. I'll do whatever. We're sending contracts out right now for 7.8. And that guy was about to pay $400,000 more because he thought he knew best about the product. And I'm getting it for him for that price, plus an additional like $400,000 in concessions. So the owner's paying taxes, they're giving X, they're giving Y and Z, all this other stuff. I'm like, are you sure you don't want to go do this by yourself? Well, totally. Go do it by yourself. Yeah. By all means, you don't need me. Yeah. So when you work with the right professional, you can save a significant amount of money and get a great deal.
And in that process can become so emotional. Right, regardless of the price point. Imagine you add zeros to the price point, it gets even more emotional.
And you're by yourselves, and you don't know, like, even, you don't know who to go to. Same thing like when kids are, applying to go to colleges, like Hamilton. It's like there are a lot of tutors and people out there who specialize in that because the mom wants one thing, the dad wants one thing, the kid wants another thing, the admission advisor in the high school wants another thing, that the guidance counselor is saying something. Like no one knows. Like where do I go? Where do I start? What time do I even do? What should I write about? What are the essays? Like do I have to take these tests anymore? Should I take them though? Like what do I do?
Yeah.
It's important to work with people who can enable and empower you. Like that's my job as a salesperson now, is to enable and empower our customers, which in my life now are other real estate agents, and our clients.
Mm-hmm. So you're a hand model, you're doing real estate, making more money hand modeling. Real estate's not going to be a career for you. At some point the switch gets flicked and you decide it is going to be your career. What was that turning point for you?
So I guess in late 2009, so I've been in the business for about a year, kind of just tinkering around. And the business for me really, was post ads on Craigslist. That was it. You go to Craigslist, all right, back in the day, you post ads for apartments, and you'd have to post them all day long because it would get buried in the feed, right? And people would reach out to you, because that's where you'd go for apartments in New York City.
And you'd write no broker fee, but then actually...
Yeah. Well, no broker fee on that one. And then you take them to something they'd actually like. And then
I fell victim to that plenty of times, sure.
Yeah, so there was a lot of bait and switch and all that. But that was just the way I was trained. It was, take photos of apartments in Chicago, put them online, say they're in Central Park West, meet people, all that stuff. Like how else was I supposed to meet anybody? I'm not from New York. I didn't grow up here. I didn't go to these schools. I don't even know. You drop me off in the middle of the West Village on some corner, I'd have no idea where I am. I didn't have an iPhone. There's no Google Maps, right? There's like my Palm Trio and a MapQuest, printout that I would have in my pocket back then.
Absolutely.
And so that's how I'd meet clients. I'd meet them as total strangers. I'd meet them at Starbucks. But a developer called our office, and because I had sold an apartment at a building in Queens, and the developer said, "No one sold anything here like what you just did. How did you do that?" Like, well, I don't really want you to know my secrets. My secrets were I would post things on Craigslist and I would meet people and I would get them to be my friend. I learned really early on, like whether it was going to schools, making friends in networking groups, anything, you immediately do the 2 C's. You give someone a compliment to disarm them, make them trust you. And then you immediately find something in common. Anyone can be your friend. And I would do that to people. And all of a sudden they're my friends and they're buying and selling real estate from me. And you're talking to them and you're engaging with them. What do you do? What do you like? Right? The last thing you do is ever sell. Right? Last thing you do is ever push. So they had a building in Long Island City, a full building where they were selling condos. And they're like, well, we want to talk to you about coming in and taking on sales for the whole building. And again, my stubbornness, my ignorance actually is my secret power. It's like, I don't want to be stuck in one building. I didn't do the math. I should have done the math. It's like, I don't want to do this. Told the broker owner of the company we were at, and they're like, shut up, we're going right now. It's a huge deal to run sales for an entire building. Like that's every real estate agent's dream, right? It's one listing agreement for 400 sales, 200 sales, 100 sales. It's massive versus going one by one by one by one by one. And we got on that building. And then they were like, what about the financial district? It's like, well, I live there now. I'd moved by that point. It's like, well, we have a building. It's 442 units. It's in Lower Manhattan on John Street. Would you like to be the sales director there? Remember, in 2009, the market was the absolute worst. Yeah. The Great Recession was in full swing. Lehman Brothers had filed for bankruptcy. That was my first day, actually. The day Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy was day number 1 for me. And I was like, do I really want to be in FIDI all day? Because I like my freedom. But I just saw kind of how good I was at it. It's like, you know what? All right, fine. So I went there and I started selling 3 apartments a week. It's like, you know what? I think I could really do this and like build something. And then I can't do this all by myself. I need to bring people on. So I'm going to find a junior agent underneath me. And then I found an intern. Her name was Yolanda. And started sort of building out my own internal little like operation, just completely making it up as I went. Like no mentor, no rules, no boss. Like I just want to sell as much real estate as I possibly can. And then like 6 months later, Bravo put out a casting call for Million Dollar Listing New York, which was the spinoff from the LA show. And I just randomly went, and there was 3,000 real estate agents at the Hudson Hotel in Times Square in March of 2010, and went about my days and life. And slowly but surely, in December of that year, they cast me in that show, and we got set to filming. And by then I was just fully committed and I was fully in it. I just made the decision that, all right, I can do this. I can do this better than anybody else. And I'm not here, and no one's nice whatsoever. No one's going to be nice to me, but whatever. I'm just going to do this my own way. I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to have cool events. I'm going to use social media to help me sell. I'm going to do all this fun stuff, and I'll just build the biggest real estate career that anyone's ever known. And I was kind of like, when I made that commitment to really back away from acting, was back then, like late 2009, early 2010.
But sort of the perfect timing of something coming along that was the marriage of the two passions.
Yeah, I get to do everything I've always wanted to do, which is be successful, right? Build a business, like be an entrepreneur, not have to listen to anybody. I don't have to be anywhere, anytime, ever, unless I'm contractually obligated to do so. Or if I've agreed to do it. Other than that, like, I don't have to do anything today. No one's going to stop me. But if I don't, then wrinkles will start to set into the business, and I lead by example every day. So it's a catch-22, right? Like this business as an entrepreneur is make your own hours, be your own boss, do whatever you want. You don't have to work another day if you don't want to. The catch to it is, if you actually want to be successful working for yourself, you have to work harder than everybody and to put in 20-hour days. And so I didn't realize that for a little bit, but it's the old saying, right? That I'd rather do today what everyone else won't, so that I can live the rest of my life like everyone else can't.
And did you see an immediate impact in your business, from Million Dollar Listing?
No. When was the last time you watched TV and then picked up the phone and called someone you saw on TV? No one does it. You think, you would think, I thought, right?
Yeah.
But remember, Instagram didn't come out to 2013. Million Dollar Listing aired first in 2012, right? Netflix wasn't on streaming. Like, there were still DVDs. And so there was a massive captive audience, but no one was reaching out to people they saw on TV. Like, we were untouchable. A lot of people would stop me on the street in New York and say, "Hey, I saw you on TV. What are you doing here?" Like, I'm a real estate broker in TV. We're talking about the same show, right? And like, oh, but I thought you must live in New York City and you just shoot that show here. I'm like, no, I'm not a actor. People don't know. They don't. It's not their job to know. But what it did was it gave me a pitch tool that no one else had. So other than the three of us that were on the show. So all of a sudden, me basically by myself, I could pick up the phone and talk to anybody, say, "I want to sell your home. I know I don't have 20 years of experience, but I have an internationally syndicated television show on a major cable network that gets watched by 25 million people a week. People watch me, and therefore they watch your listing. I'd love to meet you." And that was something no one else could offer.
Yeah.
And so initial business started because the first day the show aired, I sat there and I waited by the phone and just waited. I was like, money's going to come rolling in. People are going to be calling me left and right. Billionaires are calling. The president's probably going to call me. Everybody, right? It's just on this huge TV show. No one called. Like, no, other than like some mean people and some random spammers and stuff like that. But it takes a long time to build up a brand and to build up credibility, especially on TV. Like, think about all the TV shows that are out there now. Like, you have no idea what 99% of them are because there's so many of them. You just don't know.
Yeah.
But it was the ability to use it to pitch myself and to really do the work where things really started to take off, because then I just saw, oh, okay, so this is all on me. I'm going to use this. It's advertising for me that I can't afford ever. And I'm going to let that happen year after year after year. And then I'm going to use it to help myself go get more business by opening up more doors. And so I'm just going to work the phone and work people. And I'm just going to do everything I can to sell as much real estate as I possibly can.
And then moving that into the modern time, you've mentioned social media a few times and things you've said. You clearly have found a way to master the use of social media and sort of just a multi-channel approach. Why does that matter for the business?
Well, I don't know if I mastered it. Some things we do well, a lot of things I think we do poorly.
Like what?
But Like anything, I think it's really hard to move as quickly as these platforms move.
Sure.
I think it's really, really hard to understand audiences. I think it's difficult for us too, because real estate is exciting, yes, but it's everywhere. So how do you get people to pay attention to it if there's so much of it? 10 years ago, there just wasn't. I put up my first YouTube property tour that I put up, I think in 2016 or so, got watched by like 20 million people. It's like, holy shit, I'm just going to do more of these. Now everyone, you want to see real estate? It's everywhere.
Yeah.
If I put up a property tour now, unless it's like underwater and on fire and Kanye's there, no one cares. There's just so much noise.
Yeah.
But what I noticed early on with the show and with recognition and even with general advertising and marketing was it was all about brand.
Mm-hmm.
Everything came back to brand. Like, why were people calling me? They weren't calling me to work with the guy from TV. They were calling me because they knew of me, and brand is reputation. And if you do the math, who you believe you are to your core, like I am real estate and what? Like that's my core identity. If I believe it's strong enough, I'm going to put it out to the atmosphere, to the world. I'm going to talk to other people about it. I'm going to talk about my successes. So now the world is going to have a perception of me based on what my core identity is, right? That perception is then going to turn into reputation when I'm not in the room, right? They're going to talk about me behind my back. And the reputation over time becomes your personal brand. It's what people know you by. It's not just your logo, your color palette, right? It's not just your visual identity. It's how they define you when you're not in the room. It's like, I want to go hard on building out my personal brand 24 hours a day. And I can do that through social. Because every episode of $1 Million Listing I would film, it wouldn't come out for like 12 to 18 months, right? We filmed that whole first season in 2010, early 2011. It didn't come out till March of 2012. So I really tried to build a brand as the real estate guy, right? The luxury real estate guy on social. If you think real estate, you think Serhant. Like that's what I want you to think of. And my goal with starting my own company in the middle of COVID in 2020 was, okay, I succeeded as an individual and as a team, because I'd built a team of about 65 people at that point. But there's only so much I can do as a team working for somebody else. I want to take this brand to the next level and I want to expand. And I want anyone, anywhere. They think real estate, they think luxury. I want them to think Serhant. And a bunch of other things that we do, but that's what we've been trying to work on.
So I've spent my entire career in marketing and advertising. And when I spent time on the ad agency side of the world, we worked with countless classically trained marketers who didn't have an understanding and appreciation of brand the way you just articulated it. Where does that understanding and appreciation come from? Because by all accounts we've just talked about, you're not a classically trained marketer, but you clearly have a strong grasp of it.
I mean, what is marketing really? Marketing is, good marketing is a response to a message. So it really became, okay, well, what message am I putting out there? Make sure there's a reason for people to respond to it. What you later learn is like, what's your CTA? What's your call to action, et cetera? What's your cold audience? Like what's the difference between paid and earned media? And now with social, right? You talk about UGC all the time, which is user generated content, which is probably the most important because it's visual word of mouth, even if it's staged, like it's all bullshit. But like I saw that if I put out our successes, that's really marketing. And if there's a call to action and people reach out and I can generate business that way, then okay, now I believe in marketing. And I believe in it faster than I would have otherwise. I just have to do more of it, right? And more of it. I think people confuse marketing with advertising.
Yep, 100%.
They see print ads, they see commercials, and they're like, oh, that's marketers. Marketers put that together. I think marketers are a part of it. That's advertising, and that's paid, right? That's paid media. That's paid advertising. And if you understand the balance and you can mix and match, a majority of my growth through marketing has just been organic earned media off the back, obviously, of a behemoth like Bravo. So I definitely had a leg up there.
And then all of the extensions to the business, courses, books, sort of production house that you've built, is that all in service of the core business?
Everything's developed pretty organically. So in 2016, I put together what I called Serhant Media Group and started to build out because I was just tired of waiting on other people to create content for me. I was like, I got to be making property tours. I got to be creating social content. I got to be doing this 24 hours a day. I can't wait on third-party people, and I can't have my assistant stand there with a cell phone. So I'm going to invest into marketing. I'm a real estate broker. At the end of the day, I'm a professional marketer. That's all I do. And so, I built out Serhant Media Group as a real estate focused media company. And then we started getting brand deals and licensing opportunities and podcast things. And so it started making money. But it was really there to support the core business of buying and selling real estate. In 2018, I released my first book, Sell It Like Serhant, that did really well. Bravo turned it into a TV show called Sell It Like Serhant. And so all of a sudden I had this kind of international recognition for not just buying and selling real estate, but sales training. And I met a producer at NBC Universal, this great guy named Kyle Scott. And we were talking and he was like, you could take all that content that you put on the TV show, you put in the books and turn it into digital education. And when I thought digital education, I thought like, the Phoenix Online School of Law, which was the one law school I actually got into. And I was like, that's terrible. No one does online education. And it's like, actually, you're wrong. It's like, really? Yeah. And then he showed me and I was like, oh, I guess I'm super wrong. There's a lot of
big business
education, adult education. I had no idea, right? Sales training alone is a $13.5 billion market. It's like, wow, I had no clue. It's like, you want me to become Tony Robbins for sales training? He's like, well, partly, but no one does sales training for the next century. There is no sales training. Everything is DVDs. Everything is ad hoc. And as I started to think about it, it was like, you know what? You're right, because I've been paid to give sales speeches to sales forces in industries that have nothing to do with me. Like the Jewelers Conference of America, the travel agency, sales group of the United States, JP Morgan, like all these sales groups. It's like, well, what do you guys do to train your salespeople? And you're like, what do you mean train our salespeople? Well, that's what the managers are for. Like, okay, well, how do you train them? Like, well, if they're good, they're good. If they're not, they don't hit their quotas, we fire them. I'm like, what are the lost opportunity costs then on having to do that? What if you just made your salespeople better and improved your bottom line? Isn't that a great B2B play? And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't exist. I was like, oh, light bulb moment. Interesting. Kyle, I think you're right. I think we should do this. And so we turned Sell It Like Serhant into an online community first and foremost, and have built it up now into 12,000 members and change in 110 countries. And so it started as a supporter of the core business and really just sort of like, okay, real estate is my oak tree. Media is one branch, social is another branch, speaking is another branch. My team are all these other branches, courses, online. Okay, sure. There's a branch. There you go. Two, really becoming almost an entirely separate tree that supports the brokerage because it supplies us with hardworking and hungry real estate agents all over the world that then want to come and work with us. And so it's like, wow, I think I just figured out the flywheel. I had no idea. Content to training to commerce. And I'm just going to rinse and repeat and do that all over again. Let's go start our own company where we do this as a full-on business, where we're not just a traditional real estate brokerage, where we're a new type of sales empowerment firm. And let's do that in 2020. It'll be the beginning of a new decade. It'll be awesome. Perfect timing. I got to figure out how I'm going to do this because we have a lot of business that we're doing, selling a billion to $1.2 billion a year. We got to figure this out. And then COVID hit, the world came to a screeching halt. Every deal died. Every buyer was litigating to get out of their contract. All money went out the door. It's like, you know what? It would be a really bad idea to start my own company right now, wouldn't it? My dad said, yep, do not do that. Everyone else was like, stay inside, quarantine, don't be stupid. Everyone is furloughing and laying people off. It's like, okay. So what you're saying is I should do it. I started my real estate career the day Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy and kicked off the Great Recession. I am going to start my own company in the middle of COVID in New York City. When New York City is on 100% lockdown, everyone is gone. They've all gone to Florida, and the city is on fire. Like literally, there were riots, fire. It was
headlines were New York City's dead. New York was dead.
New York City was dead. I was like, you know what? I don't think it's going to die 100%. This is not nearly as bad as what people are saying. I think the media just really wants this to be bad because, man, oh man, are these great ratings, right? The more death tickers you can put on the bottom of a screen, the more people are going to tune in. So why don't we just do this now? Because no one else is going to do it. It'll be a lot cheaper for me to do it now because if I started a company when the market's hot, I'm going to have to like do a freaking parade or something, right? The leases would be so expensive. So I'm going to take advantage of this moment in time, and I'm going to be as bullish as I possibly can when everyone else is fearful. And thank God I did that. I do not know if I would be here today if I had waited. If I had waited until I was comfortable, I don't think I would have done it. It would have been way too hard, way too expensive. And that's kind of what stopped me from doing it leading up to 2020. Right? COVID was an amazing opportunity for growth. As sad and awful as it was, for those of us that, were able to live through it. That sounds morbid. You know what I mean?
I do.
It just was, it was a moment to kind of like what comes from ashes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hearing you talk about the evolution and the additions to the business as you've gone, one of the key things I was curious about was this part of some grand vision? And it's interesting to hear that, no, you've learned along the way and continue to build and grow. With that in mind, what's next? What's the next thing that you've learned that you're going to look to incorporate and continue this path? Well,
the goal is to build the biggest real estate company on the planet that is powered by media and grown through education. And I don't think Hamilton goes anywhere. At the end of the day, this is a kind of Hamilton-led podcast, right?
I was going to come back to it eventually, but yeah. Thank you for bringing it back. I appreciate it.
I don't think, schools like Hamilton that are so good and so strong and really produce great adults don't go anywhere. But there's a lot of people who possibly shouldn't go to college, who possibly shouldn't take on the debt, who possibly can't afford it, right? Where maybe they're not going to get that big high-paying job when they graduate that the college, promised them that they were going to get. For those people, they're going to enter the gig economy. The gig economy is powered by about 1.1 billion people right now. By 2027, 50% of the workforce in the United States is going to consider themselves in some way, shape, or form an independent contractor, which means they're going to be selling something. And we might as well be the ones who teach them.
And what's the secret sauce behind your method? Is there one?
Stay as busy as you possibly can because you'll be so busy and too busy to fail. Like you just have to be relentless. I'm relentless about brand and relentless about growth, and you just have to move. The people that I see fail have either have terrible ideas or they have analysis paralysis. They overthink everything, absolutely everything. They panic about things that just don't matter. Like, take a cue from Nike and just do it. Like, just go do the thing. The hardest thing to do is just start. So just do that part, right? Just go start. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out? Okay, great. Well, it wasn't going to work out anyway because you weren't even going to do it. And so, we just keep building and starting and keep telling everyone we're the greatest. And eventually we will be. I believe in the power of positive energy, and I really believe in positive affirmations, whether they come true or not. Like, I knew that when I moved to New York City, I was one day going to be successful. I thought it was going to be on Broadway or movies. Turns out it was as a real estate broker, and now as the CEO of a real estate firm. So the path is different, but that's okay. As long as you realize that bumps along the way are just speed bumps and not brick walls. You don't go running home. You stay the path, right? Go over the bump, learn from it, keep driving. Just keep driving and stay hungry.
And I guess back to sort of how you started this conversation, it seems to require some acceptance of discomfort along the way.
Yeah, you have to be willing to sacrifice. Like, within reason. I mean,
sure.
Like, I didn't, I talk to real estate agents all the time. And I'm like, okay, you want to do real estate in New York City? They're like, yes. I'm like, all right, so move to New York City. They're like, oh, no, I can't afford to be in New York City. Like, well, I don't get it. Like, well, that's why I need a job and working with you, and I need to do big deals so I can afford to live in New York City. I'm like, what do you afford to live? How? And they refuse to give up comfort. Like, well, at my home, my parents take care of me and they do my laundry and I have free dinner and I don't have to pay rent. Like, okay, you do not get to work here now. Like, if that is your mindset, you don't get to work here. Like, you have to be willing to live in $1,000 a month, terrible studio apartment, because the future is so much greater than the present. And that's who your boss is at the end of the day, right? Like, I'm 38 now. I feel like I graduated college yesterday. And I know everyone says that, but it is so, so true. The minute you realize you work for yourself in the future is the minute you become totally okay with current pain for future gain. Like, you got to be willing to put in the hours and put in the time and put in the pain and eat the ramen and do the stuff. And I think that's a real key to early success, because you'll outpace 99% of the competition just with endurance. Like, it's the tortoise and the hare. Let everyone else be the stupid rabbit, right? And you just be the guy. It's just your head's down, you're doing your thing, you're moving forward.
But in that world where you're your own boss and eat what you kill, as you said, how do you allow yourself to have some sort of balance? You're a dad. You want to spend time with your kid.
Yeah.
Where is that balance, and how do people who are taking your course find that balance? Do you help people in that regard too?
Well, it's funny you ask you that. Our next course, so it's our 6th course we put out as part of the curriculum, comes out September 21st, and it's our Business in a Box course. So if you're an entrepreneur, you want to start your own business. If you're in real estate, obviously, and you want to build your own business, you want to build a team, you want to learn how to scale, you want to know how to interview people, you want to know how to find people, all the stuff that goes into starting your own business. We built it and we put it into a course for people. And a big key to that is understanding there are 2 steps. One is a foundation with clear systems and processes, so you understand what the machine is, even if you are just by yourself. And second is scale. So how are you leveraging time, right? We all have the same amount of minutes every day. We have 1,440 minutes a day. That is it, right? 440 of those minutes are going to be spent eating, sleeping, kissing the kids. You have 1,000 minutes a day to be productive, plus minus. Maybe you have less, maybe you have more. How do you use those minutes to do as much as you possibly can? And you do that through scale. Like, my first hires were a junior agent for free and an intern for free. Now, all of a sudden, I'm, 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3. I wanted it to equal 9, right? So how can I multiply our output? And that was a big eye opener for me, right? You don't have to do anything by yourself. You can really, really start to leverage other people.
So you mentioned Hamilton. To bring it back to Hamilton before I let you go, as you sit there today, the CEO of a successful and growing company, if you think back to your Hamilton days when you were starting there, is there anything you wish you had known?
Oh man, I would have met. You know what? I would have been more social. I told that to my little brother too when he was about to go into high school and college. I was always very shy. I was very much the introvert. Like, why do you think I did theater? Like, you do theater so that you can pretend to be somebody that you're not. Like, at the end of the day, every theater kid is a bullied 6th grader, and they don't get into theater for the most part because they've got an amazing voice or they're triple threat. I mean, some people do, and lucky them, but most of us get into it because we don't like the person we are. And when I go to do theater in school, I get to pretend to be other people, and it gives me an out, right? It's like, it's a freedom moment. I get to play pretend for an hour. And I spent so much time focused on work and schooling and theater and not networking and meeting other people. Like, for anyone that's at Hamilton, if you've listened to this whole thing by this point, and you've heard this before, your net worth is your network. Use the people at Hamilton. They're all there for a reason. They all got in there for a reason. I would know everybody. Like, that's the biggest mistake I think I made, is that I just stayed in my own little bubble. I didn't get out there and try to meet more people and establish more relationships, because there are going to be people in your grade, your class, your fraternity, your sorority, the class beneath you, who are going to have the ability down the line, and you don't know it yet, to make a major impact on your life. And you don't know how. Could be in some random reason. You don't know how. Or it could be massive. I would suck up the introvert in me, and I would put on my extrovert hat and just go out and just say hi to more people. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give to a school like Hamilton. Obviously, go to school, learn, get good grades. But your net worth is your net worth, and the net worth at Hamilton is massive.
All right, that's Ryan Serhant, class of 2006. Pure hustle, right? Certainly the first person we've had on the show and first person I've ever known in my life to be hand famous. And just remarkable to hear how he went from being hand famous to legitimately famous and now legitimately successful with his company. My thanks to Ryan for joining this week. Wish him nothing but continued success and growth for his many business ventures. And hey, now that we're back and doing this on a regular basis, if you haven't already, give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, whatever is the thing on your favorite platform, give it to us. And while you're at it, drop a review. Let everybody know what you're liking about the show. You have been listening to Had I Known on WHCL-FM, Clinton, New York. Had I Known at Buzzsprout.com. Had I Known Show on social media. As always, my thanks to Dr. Michael Woods for supplying the music on this show. And, once again, Doc is going to play us out. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next week.
Had I Known podcast show on your radio or take it to go.